Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and we are reviewing, analyzing DEVS. Shocker, it's not a movie. It's sort of related to movies in that Alex Garland, the writer and director of the show, is the writer and director of Ex Machina and Annihilation. We love those movies, so we said, even though this is getting, not the best reviews, we're going to watch it. It's a mini-series. It's like in the high 60s on Metacritic.
If you have not watched the show, I think we could do like a recommendation before we get into everything else.
Yeah, we'll do like a little...
It's not appropriate to talk about this show without spoiling it. My recommendation would be, if you like Alex Garland and you're curious, you'll find lots of Alex Garland that you like. You'll also find things that are like a little murky in how truly coherent they are, and it's not always saying something like new or profound with some of these ideas, though. I think it doesn't grapple with them in as significant of a way as, his last two films. I think you find some of the things that are really exciting about him as a filmmaker, some really great scenes that, and a lot to think about, which is really good. Like, we were talking about this for a very long time, also trying to sort of decipher whether it's coherent, whether it makes sense, a little bit about what it's trying to say, just because there's interesting ideas in there.
I definitely liked his movies more, partly because the pacing in those films is just like you're always discovering, you're always finding new things. And in this movie, the amount of time is much larger, and I don't feel like it's well utilized a lot of the time.
Yeah.
There are subplots that feel like kind of a waste, and you just go, get back to the ideas.
Yeah.
It also has a protagonist that ultimately you don't come to care about as much as...
Or at least you did.
You should have.
Humbling you. You didn't come to care. Maybe someone really cares out there. I don't know.
Maybe, but I know I've heard this criticism a lot.
That's actually, I think, the biggest problem with the movie. There are almost scenes where there are characters talking about her saying, yeah, she's like this. She's like this. There's something about her that's this. And I'm like, I'm not getting that. The viewer, I'm not getting this.
They put that on in the last episode. Someone like labels her.
They tack
a thing,
it on. They
and
tack
it's
it
like,
in there.
You didn't earn it.
They kind of did like a Neo in the Matrix, like you're the one thing, and it didn't work for me. I don't think, like, why did they have to do that? The supporting characters were more interesting.
Nick Offerman is really good in this. You will not be disappointed if you like Nick Offerman and you want to see him do something more dramatic. For sure, he's really good. He was by far the most interesting. He had like more going on emotionally, and it made me wonder, like, why are we focusing on the character who has less going on? In Annihilation, like, Natalie Portman's character is going through something that makes her want to like resist this biology change thing. In this one, like, I don't know what her relationship
She's just more like, I have to find what happened to my boyfriend. I need to stop being harassed by DEVS. Like, that's more of her motivation. I mean, that's really it. Is she has to stop being harassed.
That's a good impression.
She's more of a survival character. That's really her motivation. Nick Offerman's is very spiritual. And there's even a supporting character named Lyndon, who I thought was really compelling. There's a good like half of it that I didn't need because it was plot heavy. They keep feeding you throughout these episodes, even when they're more plotty, some food for thought about, where this could go. And I was constantly making predictions because I watched this on a week-to-week basis. And oftentimes I couldn't see where it was going. So those things are really exciting and really great. But I was like hungry for those niblets. Some of these middle episodes left me a little, wanting more.
Yeah, especially like episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah. Or there are some scenes in this series that I think were like weak scenes. Like, they weren't well directed, They weren't well acted. It wasn't like his best work.
I enjoyed the series, but it definitely left me wanting more, especially like this length of a series. I didn't feel like it justified the length, and there were some weak spots for sure.
I would still really recommend this show. The concepts are really interesting. Like, I was watching lots of YouTube videos and stuff on quantum mechanics after this, different theories that are presented in the film. And if it gets you curious about that stuff, I think that's kind of his goal.
All right, let's enter spoiler territory. Warning, beep, 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 beep. Get out if you haven't seen it. Goodbye.
You can leave the room, leave the YouTube video running on your laptop, and then come back when it's over.
So this show deals heavy in determinism. The DEVS machine is essentially revealed to be like a predictive model. They use the metaphor of pushing a pen. So if you push the pen, then where did the push of the pen come from? And where, you can trace it back forever and you can trace it forward forever. They have an experiment that they did on a dead mouse that is the center of like their prediction for what happens in the past and what happens in the future.
Yeah. It basically builds a universe like backwards and forwards. It's building one single timeline This is sort of important to understand because like the machine's sort of a mystery that's unraveled like very slowly, which I liked. In order to create a projection of the world, they had to implement everything that we know about physics, and you get into quantum physics eventually, and those little particles don't behave in the same way that objects behave. They violate principles of locality. Potential of an object to be in certain places is just as influential as where the object is actually like observed to be. So the pilot wave theory that's referenced in this film is actually an interpretation of quantum mechanics that's just trying to keep determinism in quantum mechanics. So it's saying like they did this double slit experiment that sort of looks like on the surface that there's two things going on at once, which can't happen. And then they say, no, according to this theory, it's just one thing happening. It's still, we're still on a tram line. We're still just going down this route. The particle's in one place. It's not all over here and all over there at the same exact time. Because pilot wave theory is sort of incomplete, Lyndon goes in, puts his little multiverse theory into the program. Suddenly you have a clear picture, but it's not necessarily like the universe that we're in that's happening or it's going to happen. It's a universe where things can be slightly different because multiverse says that you can branch off into many different directions. Forrest doesn't like this because there could be a universe where he didn't do that, where his daughter's alive. And then it's a question of does he have the choice? Those are essentially like the two grappling ideas. And so I want to talk about more like where does the show settle with those two ideas?
Well, the show settles on the multiverse theory because that's the theory that when put into the program makes the program work, it clears it up. And ultimately, when Lily made the grand like original sin disobedience choice, the show's saying ultimately that like the multiverse is correct, and Nick Offerman is the only one who just doesn't want to see it to absolve himself of guilt.
This is another thing I was conflicted on. Alison Pill's like staunch defense of determinism even in the face of like new evidence. Their like insistence that like this is, this reality is like what's going to happen, even though they understand the machine well and they understand Lyndon's theory well. Like, but that's why it's like, why didn't Nick Offerman understand that? If he knows that Lyndon's model is projecting one universe, they literally watch it in like the HD that Lyndon's model has. So why doesn't he just get, I guess that's his like his flaw, is that he just doesn't like see that happening. So the climax, right? She throws the gun, she saves the world by doing so. In essence, she created the simulation because she gave Alison Pill the idea that, we can actually go back and create a new timeline, or else she wouldn't even have attempted it if she thought that it was just one thing. She saved Nick Offerman and his daughter and her own life. But it was like so obvious, That's the thing, is like, It wasn't profound that she threw the gun, and there's nothing special about her that they tried to say, there's something special about you. You're able to break determinism, just something about you.
No, you know what?
Didn't make any sense.
It was like, you like you go off the beaten path. Like you do what you're not supposed to do. And I see how like sometimes in the Russia shit where it's like, are you really gonna like actually go talk to the Russians and like dive into that? And she does. Like that's the show trying to show that that's what her thing is. But like that's not really like, I don't even know if you could write a character that is their thing, because then you're assuming that like other people don't do things that they're not supposed to do. Like it just felt weird, and it was forced. Like,
and him like telling her that she's special and shit at the end was like, just didn't work.
Forrest is compelling in his like emotional justification behind what he believes, but I thought that it was a little underwhelming that instead of actually confronting this idea, or like confronting like, wow, maybe I have to accept that the universe is this way, maybe I have to accept that this happened to my daughter, he doesn't really do any of that because he kind of just is given what he wants at the end. It didn't really feel like he had to do any.
I'm actually okay with that. If they wanted to take it to another level, they could have done that. But I like that he tried so hard to get that, and he did get what he wanted.
There weren't any compelling, really emotional arcs in the whole show.
Lily throwing the gun is just obvious. It's obvious that she would make a different decision, and it's obvious that she's capable of doing that. It's not a revelation. Like, you look at Nick Offerman's face, and it's like, how did you do that? And I'm like, there you go. Obviously, you had to do that.
Well, one of my problems in general with the show is that nothing feels revelatory, and part of it is because you get some juicy time exploring the ideas, but because the show is so long, by the time that you reach the ideas being confronted, like, you kind of know the momentum was really off when you compare it to watching Ex Machina and Annihilation. Those movies are, the discovery is always happening, it's always coming, there's always something new, there's always something developing. But this show is weird because sometimes it feels like that, and when it feels like that, you're like, oh yes, the first episode, I thought like the entire first episode was probably the best of the entire season. Like, I was just very compelled by that. Then the episode 2 happens and there's some Russia shit, and you feel yourself going, you know, this is not a multiverse thing. You just feel yourself like going, oh, now we're kind of in, we're just not like learning these things. Get back to the ideas. You know, it's Russia, Russia, Russia now.
Oh boy.
I kind of felt like that. That whole thing I didn't think needed to be there. When I think about what was necessary, I feel like the last 3 episodes actually, you know, they had some momentum to them. But then again, Lily, like, her character, I don't really know why Alex Garland felt compelled to put her as the center of this story, especially when Nick Offerman was more interesting. Lyndon was more interesting. In the first episode, I thought it was so cool how, like, this guy, like this random, you know, guy who's interested in tech is like finding out this incredible information. My interest dropped after I learned that he's like a Russian agent. Some government like sent him to do that, and it feels less compelling than just like, this is a guy. The Russia stuff didn't go anywhere. The I guess you call him like the hitman or the henchman. He was just a physical threat that the show felt like they needed to throw in.
It's a physical barrier.
To make some more obstacles for Lily. I always just wanted the show to go back to the ideas, because that's where it was really interesting.
And I also wish the henchman had a little bit more of like a stake in DEVS. What if the henchman went rogue because he wasn't like Forrest? He believes that there's a universe where we can kill Lily and stop it from ending.
Even Alison Pill, we don't really get much of a backstory about her. There's only
She's
one
sort of
character
robotic,
who
and
has
you're like,
stakes
why
in
is she robotic? And then she becomes less robotic. And you're like, okay, I kind of see you more, but I still don't know why you're robotic like that. I like to go into the questions, and one of the questions is like, was Lyndon right?
We know Lyndon was right.
Again, I think there's 2 ways you can look at the movie. On one hand, it would be like really profound if the simulation was the only way to keep these characters alive, right? And that's if there's one tram line of determinism and then there's one branch, which is the simulation. In that case, like, they very much are like gods because they're creating a new universe. So I actually kind of like if the movie settles on that there's one path, because, you know, then the simulation idea is like really interesting. Then that's like the creation of a multiverse. But if there is a multiverse, it defeats the need for a simulation. If the multiverse is true, by that logic, there are plenty of universes where he and his daughter are alive. So what's the point of having a simulation? Like, it's already happening somewhere.
Because he can't experience it there. I don't know.
I understand, but he's experiencing it somewhere, just like he's experiencing it in the simulation.
Yeah, but he can't be aware that he's experiencing it.
Yeah, he's
somewhere else.
not. Oh, yes, he can. Because in the same way that he's not aware because he's dead in the regular reality.
Oh, because he's dead.
He's aware in the simulation. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I guess so.
So there's something where I don't know where the movie's settling on that, because it is cool to think that like the simulation saved it, and then maybe the machine just made a mistake. That would be like one bubble of interpretation. The other one's like multiverse just lets the fucking shit out of the fan.
I can understand if the theory is that it's going along this line and Lily created an alternate timeline, but why did the projections stop
when she died?
After they died instead of when
convenience.
she threw the gun?
I think it's convenience, but I think the projection in real life should have stopped when they showed her the movie of herself. Because that would be a place where you'd get an error. Like, if this was like coding, you would get like an infinite regression error. Because if you show somebody something, they get stimulus, they behave differently, so then you still have to account for that. But like, whenever you account for that and you show them a different projection, they still behave differently. It's an infinite feedback loop. That's an error. Error, wah, wah, wah. It is like, just move your arm. Like, just do something. I know.
You can jump up and down. Like, I don't know how you would go about doing that in a different way, but like, you could just do something.
It's such an obvious thing. And even if you said, oh, people are just victim to their impulses. Again, it's stimulus. We don't have to have free will. We don't even have to be free agents. It's just stimulus that makes us want to do something different. The machine wouldn't just suddenly, like, we wouldn't just start being robots because we saw our future. Now I can't I can't prevent what I'm doing with my arms. Like,
I don't know why you think that there's a viable interpretation that it's determinism.
Again, the way that the machine works is that it comes up with different possible interpretations. But like, there's a difference between saying it could happen one of 3 ways, but it just goes this way. Multiverse like literally says that 3 universes sprout out from it, which I think is like a little weird and dumb. It's kind of two separate things. Randomness can happen without there being a multiverse occurring from it, like in a branch way. The multiverse is just a way to get around the law of conservation, where it's just saying, you know, oh, they didn't just disappear. It didn't just collapse into one reality. There's still three, it's just in different places. So the machine sees in terms of probabilities, right? I think that's what we're sort of getting at. When the machine was hazy, there was a lot of fuzz because it was trying to like shove just one timeline in, but there were also like lots of other ones sort of happening. So Linden's just sort of cleared the air around it and said like, no, we're just going to look at this tube. Whereas like it was just an overlapping mess of tubes before.
Story-wise, Nick Offerman's character's staunch belief that there is one universe, and then the show saying, well, like Linden's right when he puts this in, like it really hints that it's a multiverse thing.
I know.
You have to be digging really deep, and I think you're really fucking hung up on some stuff.
I know. That's what I'm saying, is the movie seems to say multiverse is true, but then it makes the end, it takes away the ending, the impact of the ending for me.
But if you think that that's true, you keep arguing for that the movie's talking about determinism, and it's not.
That's where the contradiction lies. I don't want the movie to be saying multiverse. Also, the ending where they say, like, we took your consciousness, we transplanted it back, you know, into where you were, like, so you knew not to make that decision, and then we started the simulation from there. That is messy and doesn't really make sense, which I'm just going to suspend my disbelief and say that, like, okay, that's possible. But, like, it wouldn't work backwards. Like, it works forwards because it's like a fractal. It goes like this. But when you go backwards, you find one timeline. Like, you can't do a reference point from now and then create a different reality. You have to have the same one going backwards.
Well, again, friend, I mean, you're hung up on things that, like,
I know.
Almost nobody would be able to make a, like, film or a show.
I agree. You can't make a film about an all-knowing machine where there's no plot holes. But I also really wanted, like, the movie to feel real for me, and, like, in the end, like, I'm just hung up on it. I hope that I've taken you through the thought process of how I'm sort of hung up, and you, like, get where I'm hung up, and you can decide for yourself if it makes sense that I'm hung up on it. You know what it is? It's because the theories are what's interesting. The story is not. So her having free will and throwing a gun is just not interesting to me. What I really want to know is where the movie lands on all of these ideas. If it lands in an ambiguous spot, I want to feel that too. I want to know what it wants me to think.
It wants you to think that the multiverse is real. Nick Offerman believes in this. Lily did this. And
yeah, but see, at the same time, I don't think Alex Garland believes in free will.
It doesn't matter what he believes. Maybe he made a movie about something that he didn't believe.
But again, like I want to get in his brain. I don't want to just have him say like, well, for story purposes, it's not really good to have determinism because, you know, then she'd just shoot him and it'd be over. And DEVS was tidy. The ending was very tidy. But I'm still like grappling, and I'm still like, I don't know, this. And that's how physics are too. When you go into the world of like particle physics and shit, like the things that people are studying, there's not an ending where we say like, yeah, that's kind of this, it's kind of this. It's a mess. In the end, it feels a little clean. And I don't think it is. I think his own ideas are less clean than the show kind of wants you to believe they are. It definitely walked around in some interesting areas, like plucking from this tree or that tree from quantum mechanics and multiple universes, but it didn't kind of synthesize into something that was profound, I guess.
Ex Machina is a better example of exploring ideas and giving you a lot of great questions that you can like ask about yourself and the world you live in. And Annihilation is great at showing like how biology and like psychology mesh in a really violent way. This movie didn't do either of those things nearly as well. Just didn't have the enough like emotional stakes, enough character building. It was
last criticism is that everything with his daughter was so like a slow motion, like hula hooping, bubble blowing,
stock video,
like running around a field thing.
Yeah, and then when he went over to talk to Lily at the end, like his wife wasn't like, "Oh, what are you doing over there? Who's that?" They just like continued doing like their motions and frolicking through the fields.
Thank you, Lily, for saving the universe.
They're like,
let's get coffee sometime. It was weird dialogue there.
They're in a Terrence Malick thing, and
turns around and like winks at her. I'll see you around.
You can actually see Emmanuel Lubezki with like a steady cam on, like tracking the family. Last thing, production design and score.
Oh, the real reasons why it was actually quite good. I think my rating came down because I spent this entire analysis kind of saying what I felt was incomplete about it.
6, 7.
Oh, it went down.
I mean, it's not that good.
Oh, shit.
It's not that good.
And obviously, I'm like deeply invested in it, which was kind of making me like an 8. But I've almost like come back from it and just kind of resigned and said, this is incomplete to me. And I think I'm gonna go with like a 7. It was worth my time, so definitely like a 7 for me.
Fuck it. 6.5.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. The best moments, the exploring the ideas, like I always liked those. I didn't like the plot detours, and in the end, the exploring ideas didn't pay off that much. And the plot detours obviously didn't pay off.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion and analysis of DEVS.
Or Deus.
Or Deus.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Are you a helpless victim of determinism with no free will?